Hi everybody, thanks for coming along. I am Alison Sainsbury. I am part of SBOS, Sitecore Business Optimization Strategies, out of Sydney. You can tell by the accent. Also in the room we have most of the rest of SBOS. Put your hands up, guys. There we go. Over there, over there, over there, back there, right? So it's really great to see you all. And what I'm going to present to you today, hopefully you're going to find really exciting. So, we all know this. Personalisation these days is table stakes. I don't need to convince anybody here. It can deliver an average 19% uplift. High-value customers want more personalisation. Personalisation can and should extend to support and service products. But still, we have users looking at their data, looking at their sites, wondering how to use it, and not getting anywhere. Now, one of the reasons for this that I find is what's called frictionless or seamless design. So, Steve Krug's book in 2006, Don't Make Me Think, very influential book. I've read it. I'm sure a number of people in the room have read it. You know, the impact of mobile and social, the frictionless long pages with no interactions on them is basically the ascendant version of design. It's gotten so far that by 2012, Aaron Levy, the founder of Box, wrote in Fast Company that either you go frictionless or you get disrupted. And nobody wants to get disrupted. That's very scary. So the problem is that personalisation, it needs a little friction. You know, we need a little bit of sand in there so we can work out what's happening. Personalisation effectively is a series of questions. Okay, who are you personalising for? Why are you personalising for them? What are you going to personalise? Where will the personalisation show? And through all that, importantly, how will you know it is them? With that, we put together personalisation tactics that say for this segment we are going to improve on this goal on this page with this content. This is the classic planning methodology that we all use. And that segmentation requires identification. SBOS and Sitecore, as you know, we love a good TLA, and this is the one that we use, the PI method. Okay, the PI method is your potential to drive revenue, your importance of the segment, and the ease of identification. This is what we do. But without that friction, we just find it hard again and again to actually identify those segments. Now, I was being asked by our customers for some help on this. The UX designers were like, give me some resources to tell me what to do here. And I went looking, right? And I have got good Google through, but I found nothing. I sat there with lots of coffee and I went searching and I couldn't find anything that specifically talked to UX people at the beginning of a site build to say, this is how you design for a customer experience platform. So we talked about it in SBOS and said, we need to fix this. We need to provide that information, okay? But we don't think that we're the only people who can provide that information. So we wanted some superheroes, and we found some. We went to the MVP Summit in Orlando, and we got up on stage and we said, we want to do this and we want you to help us. Who wants to be involved, okay? And some great people put their hands up. So what we get at the end of it is a collaborative thought leadership piece, which we are launching today, Sitecore Business Optimization Strategies, and a team of superheroes. Right? 3 of them are here right now. 1 of them is out there. Everybody knows Una, right? A few of them couldn't make it, but these people all contributed hugely. And we pulled together all of their insights, and what we get at the end of it is UX4CX. Okay? Hashtag UX4CX. So I'm happy to say, as of today, it's alive, all right? We have a 30-page white paper, we have a handout and an infographic, we have the handouts available for you as you leave today. The white paper is alive at that link and you can download it right now, okay? One thing I might just say, sorry about this, marketing people, am I right? They gave me the wrong link for the handout. So if you get the handout, it will have a lowercase x in there, just use the all capitals, all right? Anyhow. It's alive. So what does it cover? Let's have a talk about that. So a big emphasis for this white paper, because a big thing that we believe will help customer success is planning for personalisation first. Okay, we have all seen those RFPs that run to 5, 6, 10 pages of detailed functional specificity. Okay, specifications, that's much easier to say. You know, all of this information and then that one line in there that says must drive needs-based information to customers at the right point in their customer journey. And there's one line, right? But this is what they buy it for. This is what they buy Sitecore for. We know this. We need to help the customers understand and plan out specifically exactly what they want to do. And the secret to that is doing it upfront. So for us, and this is the infographic on the white paper, which looks like this, right? Right? This is basically your project journey, right? Everybody starts with discovery. If you're planning for personalisation first, at the discovery section, you're just going to ask a few extra questions. You're going to get a few more insights there that you really need to do that planning for personalisation. And then you're going to do it. You're going to do a workshop. SBOSS methodology obviously is great. We recommend it. You may have your own methodology. You're going to specifically plan out your goals, your engagement value scale, your personalisation tactics, the segments, the marketing automation tactics, all that detail, doing that up the front of the project. That then will feed into your analysis and scoping phase. What kind of integrations do you need? What data points do you need? What's the content analysis and the gap that you have there in order to get personalisation up and running? During design, obviously, your personalisation tactics have a huge impact on your UX and your templates and your user stories. When the development is underway, your data collection, architecture, integrations will be built to supply the infrastructure for personalisation. And when you're at testing and content load, your content editors can test that they can personalise, they can open it in an experience editor, they can change out a data source, that's all working. On the front end, they can test that personalisation's in place. Of course, if you've done your personalisation and planning up front, you already know how you're going to be profiling your content. And then when they do the content loading, they can apply the profile cards to the content. And then we don't end up in that incredibly painful situation where you have to go back afterwards and go through 2,000 pages and apply profile cards. I've been there, I'm sure you have, right? You launch, okay? You launch with a site which is collecting that rich data, which immediately provides better measurement. Engagement is key, right? You have your A/B testing in place, you maybe have personalisation in place, that's a business decision, right? But you have immediately, you're able to prove that business value and that return on investment. And of course, it doesn't end with the launch then. Then you go into optimisation, okay? You've got the plans in place, you know what you're doing, it's ready to go, the customer is on board, right? You end up with a best practice build delivering that relevant experience for your users, which in return gives you a proven return on investment. So, some of the specific things in this white paper, and I'm not going to go into them in a huge amount of detail because I want to allow time for questions. Micro-conversions. Okay? Micro-conversions are actions which can tell you what a customer is interested in but without asking for any identifying information. So some examples of that might be the kind of quick links navigation on the homepage of, what are you looking for? Who are you? This can work really well for any number of use cases, and all of this is covered in detail in the white paper. What kind of customer are you? Okay, these things get a really huge interaction usually on your site because, the user feels like this is a navigation, it's a short link. They use that. The white paper covers that, and it covers how to build it so that you can collect that data and personalise on that. What's important to you? This is a really good one, particularly for lots of really kind of content heavy, like professional services, etc. Ask them a question, what they think about it. That can really feed into your personalisation strategy. There's some best practice and recommendations in here. For example, ask the next question after the previous one has been answered. Don't be a gatekeeper. Nobody likes a gatekeeper. Don't set the expectations you can't meet, okay? Don't, for example, say, answer this so that we can personalise the site for you, because they'll be thinking Amazon level personalisation. Very few people are doing Amazon level personalisation, so don't promise something you're not going to deliver. Don't ask them something without offering something helpful in return. The more questions you ask, the more they're going to think, I should be getting a personalised experience out of this. If you ask them one question, expectations are fairly low. You ask them 5 and then you show them something not relevant, you lose their trust. Okay, and then don't lock them into one answer. Obviously, if we're talking about the kind of travel site or what have you, where it's like, I want to go here, you want them to be able to reset that. And then there is technical guidance. Technical guidance such as using forms, marketing automation, custom facets, and profiling to capture the data from these kinds of micro interactions. Micro interactions, they require less effort from the user. Okay, so not really asking a question, more just prompting them to take an action on the site, but they can still provide really useful touch points to see what features or aspects of your product or service the customer is most interested in. For an example of a micro interaction would be a click to. Okay, now this is actually a really cool one. As far as I know, not a Sitecore customer, it's on Ford, okay? They're on the website of the Ford USA, they have the models, and on the models, there are little links, little, like red dots with a plus on them. When you click on them, it opens up an overlay. And in the overlay, there is a carousel, and then you can click down here, view details, and there is like a download a brochure, and a bit more information, and there's calls to action, okay? That is a really great example of a click to learn more. Accordions and tabs, okay? It's a really good example as well. The white paper discusses the relative merits of accordions and tabs, okay? How you use SXA to do them, right? And then how you can kind of tag them up to actually get that data coming through. Related items, been around for a long time. There's a reason for that, it works. But, again, often the UX people are like, nah, not so much, okay? Different kinds of image display, how you use that in a personalisation strategy. That's in there. And then calls to action, hugely important, obviously. And search. Search is a good one. People think about search on their site, but then they don't think about how you could use that in a personalisation strategy. Maybe you want to have a search component come up after somebody's been looking around a few times. How do you get the search data into your personalisation strategy, and how do you use it to analyse what people are looking for that maybe is in your content, is a content gap? As I said, there is some technical guidance. It's not deep technical guidance, but it's look for this, and then here's some links to go there, because we didn't want to write lots of code or anything like this here, right? So the recommendations for using SXA and how to tag a component to a goal or event, the importance of experience editor compatibility, because again, this is aimed at the UX people, the marketers, the business people who are at the beginning of the site. So the importance of saying when you're at the testing stage, make sure you can open that in experience editor, make sure you can do this and that, just to make sure they actually do really get the best practice out of the build. And then the discussion around tabs. There's a few options out there around how you develop tabs or how you kind of put those in place and how that's going to work. Pros and cons of having them load in a separate page, for example. Thank you pages. Personal peeve for me, okay? One of the greatest casualties of the cult of, it's not a cult, it's a cult. The cult of seamless design has been thank you pages. This is my personal frustration. They've become nearly extinct. It's meme time. All right. Now, UX4CX gives you 9 use cases for having a thank you page for your forms, okay? Even simple ones like a newsletter subscription. Meanwhile, there's only 2 cases where you don't need to have them. 9 versus 2, have a thank you page, okay? Now this is out of the box functionality, but we do still provide some technical guidance, such as the order of save actions, depending on how you're going to be doing it, personalising the page based on previous content to continue the journey, because the number one thing that I get UX designers saying to me as to why they don't have a thank you page is it's going to interrupt the customer journey. Okay, I don't think you're understanding how that's going to work. Have a thank you page. You're going to continue the customer journey, and then there's more. IA and profiling content, okay? This is important. So how you do this is covered in UX4CX, including how personalisation road mapping can help you identify content gaps early in the project. Some simple profiling strategies to start with. The efficiency of having your profile cards mapped to your IA before content load so you can avoid being in this situation, okay? Wireframing and page layouts. So of course your presentation roadmap is going to have a really large impact on how your wireframes and page layouts will be built. working closely with your front-end devs will allow the right granularity of personalisation on your components. We've all been there trying to get personalisation up and running, and it's either one big component, or in the case of one customer where I was trying to personalise, I would have had to personalise 136 components on one page in order to do what they wanted to do, because there was no wrappers. The importance of that collaboration between UX and front-end devs, you know, really like working together, really important. Additional placeholders, flexible layouts, and then personalising and optimising for site-wide components such as headers, footers, navigation elements. When would you do that? What are some use cases and what's some ways to do that? And then finally, there is some additional guidance. So the last section of the white paper provides some further technical guidance, including considerations for component usability and reusability, using Sitecore's out-of-the-box capabilities as much as possible. Open graph and metadata, if you've got it in there, then great, but if not, make sure you build that in there. There's really good reasons for that. Security considerations, always important, particularly in this market, obviously. Links for Helix, SXA, the community, etc., where to find help, because if you don't write code, there are no bugs. We really want to make this as easy as possible, okay? But many of you in the audience may be on the technical side. You're devs. Why do you care? Like UX, right? Okay. But it's important. It is important. So doing this kind of personalization strategy, getting this out to your UX people, it creates this alignment, which is just fantastic to see amongst your technical, marketing, business stakeholders as to what are the agreed actual outcomes of the site. What do they really want to have happen? You get a greatly improved engagement across the entire team in the project. You can move those kind of skeptical, apprehensive stakeholders to be enthusiastic supporters, particularly when you're working on a project which has maybe been brought in by the IT department. And the marketing people and the business people are like, sounds a bit complicated. This kind of personalization planning, getting this all in place, heads off a lot of problems down the path. And it engages the customer. You know, they get to think about how they're going to be planning their future campaigns around personalization. What data points are they going to be deploying? What content do they need? Wow, we can do email segmentation, that kind of stuff. It's really, really worth doing. And at the end, you have a more successful project, which means that you have a happier customer, and you have a more successful partner, and you have more jobs. And you get to avoid making this face. So, how do we get the word out? Okay, as I said, you can pick up a handout. They'll be handed out at the back of the stage. Just remember that the bit.ly link is all caps. Okay, download the white paper, send it out to people, etc. Okay, tell your colleagues, please, share it online. Hashtag UX4CX, works on LinkedIn, works on Twitter. I've certainly been tweeting it non-stop. It's not trending by now on my personal usage. I don't know why. And then Sitecore will be doing a major marketing campaign around this. So our Q4 campaign, you know, this is going to be one of the key assets in there, and we're going to be getting that information out there to everybody. It is live right now on the Sitecore site at that address. So, questions, and I would like to invite my 3 contributors that are in the room up on stage to help answer any questions. Okay, come on up, boys. Yeah, sure. Like, you know, how you been, Chris?
Good.
Yeah, good. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Feeling happy about having the session earlier today.
That was good. That was good. You guys good?
About a new way to measure.
Okay. If you don't know them, this is Chris Nash, this is Nabil Ofali, and this is Simon Langevin. Correct? Did I pronounce that right? Yeah. Okay. We also, Una is out there somewhere. Everybody knows Una, right? So are there any questions about this, about what we put together? Yep. Microphone coming, sorry. So everybody can hear.
In your list of potential implementations, personalization, you had related content in there. Mm-hmm. You immediately followed up by saying, because it works, and then qualified it by saying, that seems to be debated by some UXers. Can you expand on that a little bit? Why? I'm not familiar with people arguing that it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've had UX people say to me that, you know, related content, nobody clicks on it, nobody goes through to it, and also calling it related content makes it sound like something boring. So, you know, one of the things in there around the related content is, you know, for example, A/B testing, calling it other things, you know.
I agree.
Yeah, hold on, I have a microphone for you.
No.
There you
Sorry,
go.
I'm so enthusiastic, I'm cutting you
Go
off.
right ahead.
That's okay. I think that when it comes to customer experience and when it comes to marketing in general, you know, we filter a lot. And as, you know, as consumers, consumers of content and so forth, B2B, B2C. And there are certain expressions that we just tend to sort of dismiss pretty quickly because we see them all the time, and usually they're not relevant. So it's convenient for, you know, from the brand point of view to just have a category called related content because they can understand it for themselves. But from a customer point of view, it's kind of like, you know, I'm just gonna filter that out. It's not relevant. Yeah. So personalization gives you the opportunity to put a little bit of payoff into an otherwise passive call to action, so that you can, you know, just put a few relevant words into adding that along to something like relevant content. And it's these small things that I find actually make a difference, from a customer point of view, and very importantly from the point of view of, let's say, content authors, digital marketers. It's an easy thing to do, and they can see, you know, results from it. They can see that actually they can get more engagement by employing like simple tactics like that. So
Simon?
That's a good question.
Yeah, Simon's going to definitely have something to say on this, being from, you know,
you see me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing about related content, I think you got a little bit of bad press because it was not personalized mostly, so it can come together, and it was not based on data. So you get there and you have always the same kind of related articles that are provided to you. But it's a good way to move from a reactive situation where, you know, the client is navigating, the user is navigating or searching, and then get to where they wanted to go. But then for the first time, you're actually proposing the next step. So obviously, you know, that's where you're kind of moving into a kind of proactive action. So I think if it's implemented well, it's definitely something you need to do.
Yeah. No, yeah,
I think they covered it all.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Yep.
We're going to get you to run from one side to the other.
Thank you. How do you divide the micro and the macro interactions? I mean, do you divide them by engagement value only, or you use other techniques?
Yeah, I mean, engagement value is definitely one of the ways I would think about it. So, you know, these tend to be on your engagement value scale quite low down. You know, they'll be a 1 point or a 2 point or something like that. You know, built up over time, they show somebody who's really, you know, engaged and looking at your content. Maybe they're not kind of further down the purchase funnel yet. They're not like, all right, I'm going to fill in a form, I'm going to buy the thing, whatever. But they're, you know, they're interested. They're engaging with things. They're opening accordions. You know, they're, you know, clicking to learn more. So that can actually be really useful. And I mean, you know, you could potentially be using goal facets on things like micro interactions to say, okay, well, anybody who's kind of, you know, doing a number of these goals in this goal facet, let's, you know, maybe instead of saying, hey, you know, fill in the form, fill in the sales inquiry, say, well, you know, would you like to like listen to a webinar or maybe download a brochure, like change those call to actions based upon they're doing these lower value goals. Right?
Can I also chip in on this?
Yeah, absolutely. When we do an engagement, when we do an engagement value scale for particularly sites which are, I mean, the ones that come to mind are things like professional services and stuff like that. Things that have got a long research funnel, we find that they actually end up quite bottom heavy with these micro interactions of like, there's a click there, there's watching a video and things like, they're not giving us any identifying information, but you know, they are kind of, they're engaging, okay? You know, and of course those goals are not just conversion points, but then you can feed those into, like I said, a personalization rule.
Good. So, very good question. At SUGCON in Amsterdam 2 SUGCONs ago, I did a presentation, something like 5 best practices for working with personalization, and that is actually recorded. It's recorded on YouTube, where all the screens are recorded. One of the tips was, you know, rethink the UX, you know, and make it more interactive, essentially. And the idea of, you know, blending in convenient interactions that users can, visitors can perform that provide small bits of utilitarian value in exchange for their data, right? So one of the classic examples, and I gave like a screen full of various examples. One of the things I dove into there was, building the ultimate slider. So there's a really good blog post with a whole bunch of examples of sliders and interactive, I think of them as like soft tools. Like a calculator on a bank site is kind of an example. But there's a lot of things you can do to sort of, like give to get, like give value. So it's like, are you a beginner, intermediate or advanced? Next step, is your preference, red, green, yellow, etc. So the visitor is going to get faster to what they want, and at the same time, it's kind of, maybe interesting to interact in that way, like what the individual's preferences are. And it's those little bits of data that, are immediately like segmenting and enabling you to have a better understanding of how to just provide some more relevant info, and then also maybe feed more of these kind of like micro conversions, these small interactive things. So in that presentation, there's some examples, a number of examples that if you want to look for more, a great blog post about building the ultimate slider.
Thank you. Let's take an example with micro interaction. For instance, I'm clicking a button, read more about certain product or something. Do you think that based on that only we can apply personalization, for example, or it's not a good idea? Maybe we should wait for more input.
Yeah, I think that, necessarily on one, it depends, okay? It always depends, it's always variable. On one, maybe not, okay? But then on the other hand, if you're talking about, in the case of the auto company, right? And I worked with Toyota, worked with and am working with Toyota at the moment, so this kind of top of mind for me. It's a product which, like many manufacturing B2B kind of things, has this long research phase, okay? And they spend a lot on acquisition at the top of the funnel, okay? And people come in and there's all of these different aspects of the product, okay? But if you're clicking to read more on the, performance aspects of the car, then that might be what you're interested in. So we could personalize based on that, right? Whereas if you're clicking to read more on, the style aspects or the safety aspects, right? That might be what you're interested in. So we could personalize on that. And of course, always you put the personalization in a test, see if it works, okay? But then if you're clicking to read more, you kind of segment it out, right? If you're looking at, say, 3 different passenger cars and you're always looking at the performance aspects, then, basically you're a petrol head and that's what they should be showing you content for, right? Whereas if you're clicking on all of the aspects of one particular car, then, hey, you're really interested in that car, you want all the information. So, yeah, absolutely it can feed into that. It just really depends upon the product and the customer and all that kind of thing. The point of the kind of the white paper is think about it, and think about building those interactions in there instead of just having a really long page with all of the information right there, and you don't need to click on anything to get any more information.
Yeah, you can also put these interactive. You can also think about like having a component that you can hide and display.
Yeah.
So that you could even test the effectiveness of using an interactive way to navigate versus like a traditional navigation, and that's a really easy thing to do in Sitecore.
Yeah, would having a nicely designed anchor links at the top of that long product page, would that help the customer get to what they wanted to? And then the fact that they actually clicked on that link as opposed to that link tells you that's what they're interested in. There's just so many options. We're trying to make the UX designers think about that, understand what's happening in the engine underneath, okay, and then work with their partners or, obviously SBOSS to, plan it out, to really kind of go, who are the customers that we want to target, and therefore, how do we need to build it? Bill?
I'm actually going to extend your question to the audience here instead of answering, and I think you're asking about...
Collaboration, right?
Yeah. So you're asking about the accuracy of the personalization, and if one push of a button or one interaction is not necessarily enough to provide accurate personalization, how much there's a potential to miss, like if I'm interacting with the page and I clicked on something, and then other information are hidden from me and presented by, quote unquote personalized contents that may not be accurate, how bad that would be to miss on other opportunities to, to get something I'm interested in. So the accuracy, basically.
Yeah.
Well, a starting answer, and that's why you have the rise of machine learning everywhere. That's a little bit what Cortex could help you do, is trying to get that level of confidence. So mostly when you're building a machine learning model, you start inserting big data, and at the end you get an output, but also a level of confidence. And you will know that, for example, 9 people out of 10 that click on that button were really interested in the show more, while the other 10% was an error. But then once you reduce more and more that level, well, actually you increase the level of confidence and you reduce the error rate, that's where you'll know that actually you're not kind of going against your users. But that you need to do A/B testing, and obviously you can do it on a small push and you don't need to do machine learning. But machine learning will allow you to test it on your entire array of users. But that's more rocket science, but it's getting easier to do now.
So can I ask the audience a question?
Yeah, sure.
Has anybody, so in Sitecore you have the ability to use profiling. So profile keys, profile cards, profile patterns or patterns. Does anybody work with that? So awesome, good. I'm glad I asked. If no one has, kind of go nowhere with this.
It's SUGCON.
So just for inspiration, Alison, you mentioned that you've gone through the hassle of having to, maybe add cards and change them and so forth. So I have, one of my colleagues came up with a pretty interesting idea that I've sort of taken a little bit further. We had a customer case where the customer has a lot of PDFs that in a partner portal. So their partners, it's a financial company, their partners can log in and download lots of information about products that the bank sells, or it's a cashless app company. And they wanted to, we had the session about, tracking triggering and goals and so forth, and other types of events. And so this dilemma comes like, okay, we have all these PDFs, do we need to create, do we create a goal for every one, or do we create one goal and assign it to all of them? What do we do? And, like if you're in my presentation before, the second slide, was it Veruca Salt, the one from, I want it,
I want it now.
I want it now, right?
Yeah.
Full respect for that. So he's a Sitecore developer. He's like, well, what we could do is we could put a goal, like all those PDFs, they're organized in folders. We could put the goal in the folder item, and then when someone downloads the PDF, I can create a little bit of code that will look at the folder and trigger the goal for the PDF. So you don't have to add goals to all the PDFs. And that was a great example of innovative thinking. And if you wanted a specific goal in the PDF, you could create a specific goal, assign it to the PDF in the media library as usual, and that would take precedence over the one in the folder. All right, great. Of course, builds it, it's there the next day, like, wow, okay, this is pretty good. So then this dilemma with, profile cards, right? So then I'm thinking, what if we put like a profile key, like think about commerce, right? You have your products organized in folders and subfolders, and also often in the content editor, the content is organized, by folder and so forth. So what if, in some cases, you could actually create the profile key, put it in the folder item, the parent item of the pages, and then when any of the pages under that item are viewed, you could trigger the key programmatically. So it gets you away from having to put cards on all the pages. So if you think that's a good idea, like stay tuned to my whatever, like LinkedIn or something, because I'm going to write more about this, and we're going to implement it in one case. Good. I get some thumbs up. Thank you for that.
Can we get it on GitHub?
Yeah, it's custom thing, but I think it's more like describing, because developers, you got the idea. It's not that tricky. It comes a little bit down to governance of content and a different way of thinking about cards.
Yeah.
Because cards are just keys. It's just convenient to have multiple keys on one card, but you could stick them in a parent item and then trigger them accordingly, and then you don't need to go deal with all these cards.
Okay, I'm putting my hands up. I'm interested.
Yeah. So because I've also been there, you know, and
Yeah.
so it was kind of like an innovative idea from my colleague Magnus, and I took it to taking it over.
Yeah.
So I wanted to tips and tricks also here in today's session.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry to monopolize the microphone here.
No, it's all good.
If you're an organization that wants to employ account-based marketing, does the guideline, is it still applicable, or if not, how does that change the rules for your personalization strategy?
So you're talking about account-based management, so like a B2B organization.
B2B and essentially, you know, trying to personalize but exchanging the individual for the organization.
Yeah, this is a kind of a relevant question for me. We have a case like this at the moment. And one of the ideas, you know, people are floating around like IP lookup and, you know, basically attributing that when you can. And it's not highly accurate, but it's one of the bag of tricks. But I think that that's a great question with regard to UX, because we're in a phase where we're collaborating with the UX designers in a partner company, and thinking about how we can actually identify an individual and then relate that individual to others in the organization, so that it's more of an account-based sort of tracking approach. So you have to put on your sort of like, you know, not tracking hat, like we're going to do some evil event tracking on people. And in Sitecore, you can do things like create custom channels. So you could recognize if you're able to identify if IBM is one of your, you know, named accounts, and you know that you know some of the IPs from IBM, or you create sort of customized. This company, they have a bunch of named Fortune like 50 customers, so they create sort of named pages for some of them, so they can attract people who they know where they're coming from, and then use that in a kind of quote unquote evil way to track, you know, people who look similar to them in a digital way.
Yeah, I've had that as well with like professional services firms. Like, so I'm working with one of the largest law firms in Australia, and you know, for them, obviously, they work with very large companies, and they want to identify you are this company, you are that company, and IP and geo kind of lookup in Australia are not terribly accurate because our infrastructure is pretty crap. So, you know, it is. It's called the NBN, it's terrible. Anyhow, but so what we're kind of trying to work through with them is, you know, email segmentation. You know, they have newsletters that go out about stuff, segmenting that by company, and then campaign tagging and facets of that. Also targeted on LinkedIn. You know, they get a lot of click-throughs, they write a lot of articles about law and stuff like that. So literally targeting the customer on LinkedIn based on where they work. You know, and I did that once at my previous job. So before joining SBOS, a little under a year ago, I worked for a building products company in Australia for 4 years, and we did targeting of a very large hardware group in Australia, because we wanted them specifically to see the content. You know, and we were putting out the ads just to the people in that group and getting them on the site and actually personalising. They didn't know it. Yeah, right. It was a bit sneaky.
Yeah,
but we had like, you
evil.
know, it was basically a case of our
Evil
account,
marketing.
Yeah, but our account manager was going in to see them to say, hey, we've got this great new product. Have you heard about this? And we've got TV ads. And when they landed on the site, that's what I wanted them to be seeing in the, you know, like 2-3 weeks lead up to it. And apparently he arrived, and you know, the office was in the hardware, basically on top of one of their big hardware stores. And he was walking through, and like, a few of the people know him. He's the account manager and stuff like that, and that's where the office is, so they know it's him. And they're like, hey, seen your ad, really good. You know, saw that online. And he came back, because I mean, it was a sponsored post to people in that company. I think it cost me all of like $100. Okay, because it was pretty targeted, but you know, and from the point of view of like the value is very high. You know, if the largest hardware company in Australia starts stocking our new product, right, big thumbs up. And they were like, yay, we saw it. So you know, that was, yeah, that's another way around it.
Has anyone worked with IP tracking where you resolve like lead feeder, and there's a couple
I
of
think
them?
we do have a case study, don't we, for a company in Canada?
How did you find the accuracy? I mean, they're pretty open about what the accuracy rate is. It's like a 30% or something.
We subscribe to a service from a third-party provider, and it's not perfect, but it works for us. We also have a very small sort of universe of potential clients, so it's been beneficial for us. We also have the added benefit that when we resolve the IP and we get a organization profile back, it's also filled out with custom facets that we have that are served from our CRM.
Yeah.
So then
Nice.
develop a custom account resolution engine on Sitecore, which then custom rules are tied into and can be applied for personalization on the site.
Cool. Is that online anywhere that I can read it?
No.
Great.
But we can talk after.
Yeah, you could get it there.
Sneaky stuff.
Okay, we've got time for one more question, and then I've got a little announcement.
I have a tip if we don't get a question. A tip, another one of the tips and
Any
tricks
questions,
bag.
or you want another tip from Chris? All right.
So,
Huh?
yeah, no. In Sitecore, how many have looked at experience profile? So, you go into the experience profile dashboard, okay. How many know that the Sitecore Analytics cookie contains the ID that you can paste up and find yourself, so to speak, as a browser?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried that? It's really super handy.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Yeah.
haven't
So you can
tried
actually
that.
get like the experience of
So
that
when
customer.
you're like sort of visiting and checking out your goals, are things triggering and like your history and so forth, you can easily get one of these like cookie reader extensions for Chrome, for example, and then go and find the string and the cookie ID, and then take it and just paste it or stick the hashes in, paste it up in the URL for the experience profile, hit enter, and then you'll find yourself, so to speak, and others as well.
Yeah.
So that's also one I like to share when we are a group of like-minded
Yeah.
enthusiasts here.
Simon, Nabil? Yep.
Just want to mention one tip as well. We've been talking about designing for users and the web and the segments of the customers. But there is one missing segment I want to just emphasize. When designing for Sitecore, let's also design for content authors. So design components, or when the UX people and designers design the mockups, and then there's a missing step there where you need to get someone who understands how Sitecore works, and then break down the components in a way that is easy for the content authors to use and the marketers to use, and personalize again as well. Usually, basically, I've seen it all the times. This is a missing audience that we don't really care about their experience, and then that makes it very hard to do anything. And adaptability would be, very low, and then they hate Sitecore and hate us. And
Yeah.
so-
Shout out to the content authors. And Jacqueline Baxter from Hedgehog wrote a great article a month or two ago about how to make life easier for your content authors. Simon, you got any last tips, last words?
No last word, I think.
The pressures.
I think we've talked a lot. But
All right. Well, thank you guys. Okay, you right? Okay. So the next one, we're going to do it again. Okay, because who needs weekends, right?
You all get a free trip to Australia?
Totally, absolutely. Well, I don't know about free, but you're welcome to come. By the way, like SUGCON ANZ, anybody who wants to come, I'm happy to organise non-lethal animal encounters. They're not all out to kill you. Anyhow, the next one will be about best practice for multi-site personalisation. Okay, we think that this is really important. More and more of our customers are multi-site implementations. How do they, get that up and running? How do they think about that? How do they implement it? What's some best practice, both from a marketing perspective, and there's also a little, bit of technical stuff in here, right? Marketing and technical guidance included, personalising across sites and channels. Again, we're not going to, it would be an encyclopedia to cover everything, but we're going to give them some things to think about, some guidelines, where to get more information, how to talk to your partner about it, etc. This will be a second half of this year project. So just finished this one, that, you know, got a few other things to do. So we're going to start putting ideas together, you know, make a bit of an outline and then kind of kick into really doing it. You know, what we did this time I think worked really well. We had a Confluence site, you know, we had a Slack channel, the people who were interested were, you know, contributing via that, really clear timeline, and then SBOS and, you know, Sitecore marketing and some of our technical people got together and wrote it and put it all together. If you want to get involved, that would be fantastic, okay? And you will find on the UX4CX white paper that the MVPs and Angela's not an MVP, but she should be, who were involved, they're named, okay? Your name is right there, and obviously that's helpful for continuing to be an MVP. This is the details. Please just email me, okay? You can also find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Slack, etc. If you can just give me the name, title, company, etc. as just information. What's your level of interest in this? Like what kind of area, what part of multi-site personalisation is particularly interesting for you? And are you more on the technical side or the strategy side? I think this one will be a bit more technical than UX4CX because there is some things to think about, particularly going across domains and stuff like that. Yeah, so this will be the next one. So hopefully we'll be kind of back to launch this at next SUGCON. Yeah, and I would love people to be involved. If not you, somebody else in your agency or, you know, somebody else who you know has got experience with this and would like to be part of it, please just drop me an email. I'll reply, you know, give you an idea of when we might be doing something. It's not going to be today. It's not going to be next week. I'm having a week's holiday. But we will be putting it together. And that's it.